Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Pen and today I'll be reading chapter 3 of It's Not Love If You Run When It's Hard by Lita Cakes. Just so you know, there's a few trigger warnings for this chapter, abuse and Asami's mention of suicide again. Oh, and another suicide. But anyway, make sure to take care of yourself and I'll see you guys in the fic. Chapter 3. Izuku thanked Recovery Girl as she kissed his temple and healed his wounds. The woman had been pleasant but a little grumpy. She looked just like her sister, Shuzenzi. Okay, thanks English. Shuzenji-san. There we go. The woman was a well-known healer in the Quirkless community. She healed Izuku more times than he could count. He'd never met the younger of the twins, Chio. He thought her name was. Shuzenji-san had become a surgeon, not a hero, but her sister, Chio, had become Recovery Girl and was the foremost healer of heroes and the UA high school nurse. Recovery Girl smacked Hitoshi with her cane when the teen asked if she had to kiss them with her quirk. Izuku and Ochako let out a laugh at that. Thanks, Hitoshi grumbled as the older hero left. Slowly, they limped off of the training ground. The rest of the students had already left since they had a head start of running away. Izuku helped Ochako while Hitoshi carried their two staffs and Ochako's shoes. She had broken the heel of her boots in the fall, so they were kind of useless now. You really think that you really didn't have to save me? I mean, I think they would have stopped the robot before they would have crushed me. That's the point, Izuku smiled. That wasn't the point, Izuku smiled. I mean, obviously the point was to save you, but it didn't matter if they stopped the robot first. It was a test. I wouldn't be surprised if Nezu himself had set it up so someone would end up under the rubble. What do you mean by test? Ochako asked as Hitoshi filled her in. Heroes don't run from danger. They march towards their death willingly if it means saving someone. And that's what they were testing. After all, being a hero isn't just about beating up villains and flashing a big smile. Izuku winced at the memory of All Might's smile. He hadn't told Hitoshi or Mei about that yet. He shrugged and spoke up again to explain. Well, I don't care if I get the points or not. The idea is that heroes are out there to save people and to help, even if it means they get hurt. So what we did what heroes should do. We saved you simply because you needed help. You guys really are nuts, Ochako laughed. But I'm glad you are. I don't think I could have done that alone. Not yet, Hitoshi smirked. But maybe that's what we're gonna learn, right? Yeah, maybe, she agreed. Izuku smiled. Hitoshi Shinso, Izuku Midoriya. The proctor who tried to kick Izuku out was standing at the entrance gate to the training ground with his arms crossed and a scowl on his face. You're both wanted in the principal's office. I'll see to it that Ochako-chan gets to her parents safely. Izuku and Hitoshi shared a look. This couldn't be good, could it? Shota paced by the window of Nezu's office, watching as their two Enigma students limp into the main school building after one of the proctors. The other left Uraraka to her parents at the front entrance of the campus. Are you sure about this, Nezu? Incredibly so. Why are you losing faith in me now? Shota snorted. After all these years with the chaotic chimera? No, Shota wouldn't lose faith in the psychotic rodent. But that doesn't mean he wouldn't question the damn rat when he got up to his crazy shenanigans. Try not to scare them off. Oh, Shota, please, I would never. The point is to reassure them that this is real. Shota rolled his eyes. Yes, he would scare them off. Nezu absolutely would. But instead of saying so, Shota checked his phone. His Archie had texted him after the exams about heading to the radio station, but he hadn't had a chance to reply yet. Schroeder told his husband that he loved him and to have a good show, then put his phone away. The door opened as soon as he did so. The boys were covered in grime and looked ready to collapse, but they were still standing tall, and Schroeder was honestly proud of them. Midoriya looked taller than he did in the cameras, but Shinso was just a few inches taller than Midoriya. Izuku was obviously wearing a blank face of confidence, but it was very obviously fake. He was scared behind it, or at the very least anxious. Schroeder really hoped that fear wasn't because of him or Nezu. Actually, if it was for Nezu, it would make sense. Shinso, Midoriya, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Principal Nezu. Please just call me Nezu. This is Schroeder Aizawa, the homeroom teacher for Class A. You may know him as Eraserhead. Nice to meet you, sir. Shinso bowed politely. It's an honor. Midoriya copied his friend's movement. You boys did very well. Schroeder motioned for them to sit and took up his spot behind Nezu at the main desk. Don't worry, you're not in trouble. When Midoriya sat down, the metal bands on his wrist jingled quietly, which caught Schroeder's attention. Up close, he could see the bracelets were barely larger than his wrist, and they didn't have a visible clasp. Were they permanent? Also, Shinso was only wearing the orange one, but he realized they both had tiny pins on the very tops of their collars. Midoriya had one that looked like an equal sign with a line through it, and Shinso's was a greater than sign. Weird, what do those mean? If we're not in trouble, why are we here? Midoriya asked. Excellent question. That's an excellent question. Why don't you explain, Schroeder? The urge to roll his eyes was hard to fight, but he managed it. Nezu flourished his paw towards the two teens in a go on motion. Schroeder sighed. You boys are here because Nezu wanted to personally give you your acceptance letters. Huh? What? Both boys looked not only shocked, but confused. Nezu cleared his throat. Izuku, your written exam scored the highest we have had in the last 2 decades. You crashed the last 2 records. I'm sure Schroeder holds no grudges about that. I don't, he clarifies, but go on. Right, so, you two are the only ones who understood the larger perspective of the practical exam. Schroeder leaned forward a bit. The teens were still shell-shocked. He probably wants to dissect your brain, Midoriya. I'm sorry, my what? He scoffed. You have to be joking. There's no way I made it into this school. Did you even look at my record? Oh, UA doesn't look at middle school records. Well, we check your grades, but otherwise no. Why? Was there something we should be concerned with? Nezu's sing-song voice was almost annoying, but Schroeder was used to it. Midoriya shook his head. Proctor made a huge deal out of it, and you just... What is this, some kind of practical joke? The teen stood up, angry. Schroeder was now the confused one. Why was he angry? Izuku. No, Toshi, this is some sort of sick joke and I'm not putting up with it. You know they're just going to pull the rug under me like everyone else does. I might have gotten the highest score in the written exam, easy, but there's no way they're taking this seriously. Besides, he turned back to Nezu. You and I both know the board of directors wouldn't accept a quirkless kid into the heroics course. Isn't this what you wanted? Shinso stood up and pulled Izuku to his side. This is everything we both wanted. I want to be accepted, not patronized. He ripped his arm out of Shinso's grip and stormed out of the room. Schroeder was fairly sure he caught the glint of fresh tears in the kid's eyes. Shinso stood for a moment, mumbled a quick apology, then left. What just happened? Schroeder sighed. I think we might have insulted him. Nezu put his face in his paw. I should have known better. I really should have. This was too much. I thought I thought that it might help to go a touch overboard, as the boy is likely not accustomed to positive enforcement, but I think we went a step too far. Shredder pinched the bridge of his nose. He thought we were just going to rip it out from his hands. Damn it, just give me the damn letters. The kid was right. Go do something about the fucking board. On it. Izuku, wait. No, Toshi, this is stupid. They're mocking the hard work we've put in. I'm so fucking sick of this shit. I thought UA would be different. I really thought this would be my last chance. He have to laugh. I really thought this would work. God, I was so stupid. What if they aren't mocking us, though? Hitoshi took his wrist, wrapping his hand around the metal bands. Hitoshi knew it wasn't proper to do it except for a very good reason, or for comfort. Touching those bracelets were a very intimate gesture, and Izuku wouldn't normally allow it, but Hitoshi was a very close friend. What if they aren't? What if this was real? We both want this more than anything. I can't. Toshi, I can't do this. I was ready to... He bit his tongue. You don't think I didn't know what you had planned? The purple-haired teen pulled him off to the side, his voice lowered into a whisper. I've seen your notebooks, remember? I've heard your mumble rants. I know what you're capable of. May and I are both astounded that you didn't go villain before this. Well, maybe I should have. Izuku tugged his arm free again and rolled his shoulders. Maybe that's all that's left for me. 3 months of UMA forcing confidence down my throat, and I finally stand up for myself, and you're fuck. Toshi, I'm so tired of being treated like this. Hitoshi pulled him into a hug. Izuku hadn't even realized he started crying at some point, but now that his face was stuffed in Toshi's shoulder, he could feel the wetness coming from his eyes. I'm on your side, remember? We'll figure this out, okay? Izuku nodded. I know you want to be a hero more than anything, and you deserve to be one. Izuku wrapped his arms around Hitoshi and clutched the back of his shirt. Even bruised, bloody, and beat up from the exams, Izuku had never felt safer in his best friend's arms than in his best friend's arms. Actually, come to think of it, Izuku has never felt safe in a vulnerable state at all until he met Mei and Hitoshi. Boys. Izuku looked up over Hitoshi's shoulder and found Eraserhead, or well, Shota Aizawa, standing a few feet away from them. Izuku pulled back and turned to wipe his face off. Hitoshi took over for the moment. Sorry, Aizawa-san, we were just leaving. No, that's not. The hero teacher sighed. I have your acceptance letters. I just want to be clear, this was not a joke. We aren't mocking you, and we aren't mocking you. Nezu's going to handle the board. Here. Izuku took Hitoshi's free hand, and his other were in his others were in the thanks. In his other were the acceptance letters. Izuku took the one with his name on it. This was real. It was actually real. Everything Izuku had ever wanted was in the palm of his hand. Why is this so unfucking believable? That was a dumb question. Of course it was unbelievable. There was no way UA High would accept him, no matter how bad he wanted it. People like me don't get these kinds of chances, Aizawa-san. Look, kid, I may not exactly know what you're going through, but I understand discrimination. I know it seems unbelievable, but I promise it's real. We want to see you both at UA, in the hero course, in my class. I don't care what your quirks are or aren't. You have the skill and the heart. That's all I care about. The older hero put a hand on each of their shoulders. Izuku flinched a little, and the man released them. Right, sorry. Anyway, the rest of your paperwork will arrive in the mail in a few days. Your parents will need to fill everything out. Oh, and we're swapping to a boarding school next year, so you'll get the information on that as well. You both better keep training over the summer. Aizawa cleared his throat. Don't be late for your first day. Hitoshi turned back to Izuku with a confused look. Izuku shrugged. He didn't have an answer for any of this. The letter in his hand felt weighty. He wasn't sure what to do at this point, except he had to go home and tell his mother. That was almost more terrifying than the idea of this being real. His mother had to give permission, pay his tuition. Fuck. Izuku? Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm fine. Come on, let's go. Hitoshi didn't believe him. Just having a sip of my apple and blackcurrant juice. Let's get right back. They split ways on the train home. Hitoshi lived a couple stops after where Izuku got off. It was late afternoon when he started up the steps to his apartment. His mother, in Midoriya, was the one person he had ever heard of to manage to earn a blue band through resentment and abuse. He hadn't given it to her, of course, but she'd stop him from killing himself simply because she refused to allow him the easy way out of life. So he was here, having to face her again. He stared down at the letter in his hand, conflicted. UA High, being a hero, that was everything he dreamed of. But facing his mother was not going to go well. Even if he's earned his way into the school, his mother would have to pay for tuition, and he really didn't think she would want to do that. But if he even wanted a shot at his dreams, he had to face her. That didn't stop the way his hand shook when he put the key in the door. Izuku? Yes, Oka-san. I'm sorry for being late. Get in here. You didn't do the dishes today. Why? Izuku took a few deep breaths, slowly swapped out his sneakers for a fresh pair of house slippers as he made his way inside, still holding the letter. I had the UA entrance exam today, remember? Oh, right. What a waste of time. What's that? She snatched the letter from his hand before Izuku could even protest or explain himself. Fight or flight told him to just stand there and not speak, so that's what he did. He let her read the letter and process what it said. Her face shifted from confusion to excitement to outrage in less than 30 seconds. The letter was slapped on the counter with the flat of her palm, making him flinch. Is this a joke? She shouted. There's no way a null like you got into UA High of all places. This is ridiculous. I won't stand for it. She grabbed his arm. Her quirk activated a second later, making it impossible for her to pull away from her. Fear swallowed his mind, overrunning his trained defensive shell. You think I don't know you cheated school to get those good grades? Then you think I don't know you cheat in school to get good grades? Then you spend all your time training and slack on your chores? And now you're forging official letters to get money out of me? What a crock of shit. I've never heard that phrase before, but anyway. It's not forged, Mum. Please, shut up. Izuku's head snapped to the side with the back of her hand lashing across his cheek. One of her rings left a thin slice through his cheekbone. The bruise and broken bones he had just had healed were already being injured again. But Mum, I said shut up. Do you want me to muzzle you again? I'd be more than happy to. No, he most certainly didn't want to be muzzled again, but he couldn't just let her think that he forged his acceptance papers. He had fought so much grief and anger to allow himself to believe it was real, and now she was doubting what small resolve he had found. Why? Why was he always so weak when it came to his mother? He only ever wanted her to love him, to be proud of him, but she never was. Even now, having gotten the highest score in 20 years on one of the hardest written exams in the country, she could only believe that he'd cheated. Izuku was obviously oblivious to them moving through the apartment, until his bedroom door was flung open. Inko tossed him into his room hard enough to knock his barely healed ribs onto his desk with the repulsion force of a quirk. He heard them crack and cried out from the pain that bloomed across his left side. Enough! Inko slapped his face again, widening the cut on his cheek. Izuku tried so hard not to cower before her every time, but he always failed. Of all the people he'd tried to stand up to, he'd never been able to find any ability to defend himself against his mother. She was a woman who gave him life, and maybe she'd be the one to take it away too. His body was pulled forward by her quirk again. No, please, Mum, it's not a joke, it's not forged, I swear. She cut him off with the familiar thick leather muzzle. It looked like a bit more like a flat strap that covered everything below his nose down to his neck. The device strapped behind the top of his head and around his neck. She held him in place, forced the lever around his face together with her quirk so hard that he could feel the damn thing digging into his skin as it was locked behind his head. She locked the padlocks over the buckles and tossed him onto the floor again. Another wave of pain made him gasp into the muzzle. If you aren't going to make it into high school, then you better make yourself. Then you'll make yourself useful. When summer vacation starts, I'll send you out to my sister's farm in the north. What? As Inko slammed the door, locking it from the outside as she left. But he had done it. He had made it. Izuku collapsed to the floor, clutching his ribs and sobbing soundlessly into the leather strap locked onto his face. He screamed into the thing, but nothing came out. He couldn't open his mouth, he couldn't speak or cry for help. Everything hurt, his vision was spotty and breathing was heavy. What did she do? May and I are both astounded he didn't go villain before this. Well, maybe I should have. Toshi's voice filtered through his mind, bringing him back to reality. He rolled to his side, injured ribs up, and tried to focus on taking small breaths. He'd been ready. He'd been prepared for this outcome, or any other really. He had the gear and the plans. He had everything he needed to make the world fall to its knees. But he didn't want it to be that way. He didn't want to do it that way. Why? Because he had succeeded. He had achieved his dream. He got into UI High on his own merit, Quirkless. He was the first, and he'd be damned if he wasn't proud of that. He'd proven a point, and they saw it. Nezu fucking saw it. Eraserhead himself saw it too. Crawling to the desk, he pulled himself upwards and gasped. His lungs sounded wet and crackling. That wasn't good. His vision was getting worse, but he managed to find his cell phone and where he had left it that morning, since phones weren't allowed in the entrance exams. There was only one person he knew to call, Osamu. Izuku? He couldn't speak, so he groaned into the receiver, and he tried to steady his breathing through his nose. It still sounded raspy and wet. Izuku, what's wrong? But breathing was getting harder every second. His lungs felt full of liquid. Oh, that was probably blood. His head was getting light. He fought the desire to pass out long enough to grunt into the phone and shake his head hard enough to make the padlocks rattle. Fuck, I'm on my way. Is your mother home? Mm-hmm, he moaned. Can you get yourself out of the window? Could he? Honestly, he wasn't sure, but he would try. There was a fire escape that he could escape, that he could climb down. I'll bring Nami. Medikit or hospital? Ah, shit. 1 for medikit, 2 for hospital. Izuku grunted twice. Shit, okay. Hang in there, kid. We're on our way. Could the motorcycles ever stop? Seriously, motorcycles? Fuck you. Okay, anyway. Izuku's hand lost its grip on the desk. His whole body collapsed onto a heap on the ground. He had to drag himself back to his phone, which had fallen across the room. He texted Hitoshi 911, but that was all he had the ability to see with his vision swimming. He wasn't even sure if he hit send. It took just about everything left inside him to get his body to the damn window and out onto the fire escape. He was well aware by now that he had a punctured lung. His breathing was getting rigid. I'm just going to rigid. And it felt like his whole lung was, and it felt like he was down a whole lung at this point. But he pushed himself forward slowly. The metal clanged loudly in his ears as he landed on his knees on the fire escape. His phone was ringing in his pocket. His whole body was buzzing with pain and fear. He could barely see. He navigated the steps by a touch alone, barely on his feet. When he got down to the lowest level, he could feel blood choking his throat, coppery and bitter. Izuku, Osamu. Izuku, stay there. Okay, he could do that. He could do that. The whole structure shook and rattled from the feet storming up the stairs towards him. Oh my god. Nami's voice was so frail. She was a quiet woman, another mentor of the Quirkless community. She was the same age as Osamu, but she looked 10 years younger. Her arms were decorated in more colourful bands than any of them had ever cared to count. She'd started on her right arm, and the bracelets had covered her left arm since her right was full. Long black hair filled his vision. Izuku, hey Izuku, sweetie, can you hear me? He nodded. Good, just hang in there. We're going to get you to Shuzenshi-san. Oh, right. Recovery girl's sister. She would help, like she always did. Shit. Osamu held up his head. These are quirks still. Bolt cutters aren't going to work. I'll need my lockpick. Osamu, the kid needs a medic right now. He'll have to tolerate the damn muzzle until we get him healed. Izuku waved a hand, trying to get Osamu's attention. I'm right here, kiddo. Osamu took his hand. Come on, let's get you healed. Things sort of faded in and out from there. He remembered being carried to a vehicle, or he must have because he remembered the way it moved, and the way he was laid in Nami's lap. But that was about it. He blacked in and out, catching a few words here and there, screams or shouts or angry words. There wasn't much else, and none of it made sense. Then blackness. He was out cold for who knows how long. When consciousness had finally returned, he didn't want to open his eyes. But he could hear voices not far away. Osamu, this is serious. I should call the heroes and the police. This woman nearly killed him. What do you think they'll do for an injured Quirkless or runaway, Shuzenji-san? There was a pause, and there might have been a lengthy sigh before the woman spoke again. I know, but I'm calling my sister. I've done all I can for him internally, but without her quirk, he'll be bedridden for weeks from the surgery. You said the kid did his entrance exam today, right? Yeah. Well, there's no way she would have let him leave in the field like this. Those wounds are fresh. His mother did that. What a monster. She's not fit for that title. Mother. Ugh. What a beast she is. Izuku faded out of consciousness again. He drifted along a black sea. He wasn't quite sleeping, but he wasn't awake either. There was a sort of peace in that feeling. He was aware, dimly, that this was a form of dissociation, likely caused by the pain medication. He was familiar with it in all the worst ways. Again, he woke up to voices. Sis, what's going on? What's the emergency? Did you treat Izuku Midoriya today? Yes, he was one of the last round from this round of exams. He did excellent, actually. Nezu mentioned that him and his friend were accepted. What are you going on? Osamu brought the boy in, near dead. Just brought the boy in, near dead. He was healthy when he left my care. You know I would never. I'm not accusing you of anything, sister. We believe the boy's mother did this. Did what? The footsteps to whatever room he was in opened. He couldn't hear the footsteps, feel people around him, but he could hear footsteps, feel people around him, but he couldn't force his eyes open. He couldn't move. What is this? That was Recovery Girl's voice. What happened? I don't know. Osamu took his hand, but Izuku wasn't strong enough to squeeze it back. He called me. I couldn't understand him. I rushed over with Nami and we found him like this. He managed to get to the fire escape to meet us. The locks on the muzzle are quirk seal. We can't cut through them. And until we can be sure his neck isn't injured, Shisenzi-san didn't want to risk trying to pick them in fear they would harm him. Dear God, I need to call Nezu. Izuku felt something graze his temple softly. Was that Recovery Girl's quirk again? He had felt it earlier, and it tingled the same way. How kind of her. Izuku drifted in the quirk's effects as it pulled his energy. He knew how it worked, but he couldn't really phrase the right thoughts together to make it make sense in his head. He could hear Recovery Girl speaking to someone over the phone. Osamu was there, reassuring him that everything was okay. He promised that he'd call Mei and Hitoshi once and tell them that Izuku was safe. He promised he'd called Hitoshi and Mei and told them Izuku was safe. Hitoshi would be there soon. A door slamming open was what startled Izuku back to the waking world. He still couldn't open his eyes, but this time he felt like maybe he could squeeze a hand if it was offered to him. Where is he? Take a breath, Eraser. He's resting. Oh, they left the door to the room open. Izuku could hear Eraserhead's thundering footsteps as he entered the building. Was this an apartment or hospital? Izuku couldn't tell. What the fuck? Why is that thing on his face? We're waiting for scans to make sure he doesn't have a concussion or neck injury before we try to pick the lock. The bolt cutters wouldn't work. Osamu's voice sounded so sad. Izuku hated it. He hated that his mentor was being forced to speak so much when Izuku knew he hated doing so, and he sounded so horribly sad. I just saw the boy this afternoon. Why is he suddenly half dead in your apartment, Shisensi-san? He was found that way by his mentor, Osamu. You? Eraserhead's voice was getting more and more tense. Osamu Takahashi. I just go by Osamu. Izuku is my mentee. Believe me, this outrages me more than you can ever believe. He's like a son to me, but you'll have to forgive me for not believing that you can do much of anything to help the situation. I don't know why Chio called you. That child is my student now. Or he will be once come the start of the school year, which legally makes me one of his guardians. Why is he not in hospital, Chio? Another drink time. taking my gloves off because it's a little warm in here. Hang on, finger crack time. Little intermittent finger crack time. Okay, neck crack time. You know what? I'm leaving that all in the video. Okay, so where was I at? Why is he not in the hospital, Chio? Do you really need me to spell it out for you, boy? Recovery girl thumped her cane on the ground. He's quirkless. No child in this prefecture would take on a half-dead quirkless kid. They'd let him bleed out on a gurney in the hallway. Are you truly that stupid? What the hell does his quirk status have to do with... What the hell do you mean? Shh, Shio snapped. Razor had yelped. Izuku imagined she smacked him with her cane. You truly are an idiot, Shota. My sister and I will get that boy healthy. You don't have to worry about that. What I called you for was to address the issue with his mother. Shota growled. Obviously, I'm going to arrest her. I thought things had gotten better. You thought they weren't as bad as they were for you? Chio finished for him. Well, they aren't. Things are worse. Now that you've got your evidence, go arrest that woman and get back here. If you're going to be the boy's teacher, then here's your responsibility. Chio, Shizenzi sighed. You know that won't do anything good. That won't do anything good. She just about killed him, Keiko. What would you have me ignore this? No, but you may as well. Wait, Eraser. The door slammed shut before she could finish speaking. Osamu sighed, letting his body leaning over Izuku and head resting on the teen's knee. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I didn't know she was this bad. Why didn't you? He could feel hot tears through the blanket on his legs. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't I see it? He's just going to make it worse. I'm so sorry. What good would it have done? Izuku couldn't have run away from home. The community was barely holding itself together, and the elders, the mentors, could barely afford to survive for themselves. Izuku knew he'd be be given couches to rest his head, but he couldn't put the responsibility of another child on someone like Osamu. If he had endured his mother's wrath for just a few more years, he'd be free of her. He'd never meant for them to see any of this. When Osamu squeezed his hand, he squeezed back. Izuku, he groaned weakly. Oh God, he's awake. Barely. Izuku wouldn't call this awake, more like half-drugged and still unable to crack his eyes open. But maybe that was a blessing. Izuku, sweetie. Chio's voice was tight, worried. We should have the scans back soon. I'm sorry, my sister's in-home scan isn't that fast. But it works. Once we can make sure you don't have any head or neck injuries, we'll get this awful device off your face, okay? Izuku hummed in agreement. He really wanted this stupid thing to be off his face. Does this qualify him for another orange band? Nami asked. She sounded like she was emotionless. She sounded somehow emotionless. That worried Izuku. We all know that was what the first one was for, but enduring something like that, I've never seen anyone do that to a child. I didn't think it was possible. Muzzles were certainly unconventional in terms of punishments, but it wasn't altogether unheard of. There were records of them being used in psychiatric wards for unruly patients, and the Quirkless, of course. But Izuku hadn't found anything to suggest they'd be used on children in the past, not officially at least. He did know Hitoshi had endured one for years because his parents feared his quirk, feared he would control them, but he always assumed that was a rarity, an outlier because of the way his quirk worked. Osamu was petting his free hand through Izuku's curls. He could feel his neck brace now, holding his head in place over the muzzle. Truth be told, Izuku had no idea if he had a concussion or not. He knew he'd collapsed more than a few times. It was possible he knocked his head. Hitoshi should be here soon. Mei is out of town with her family. Oh, right. She mentioned that yesterday after her own entrance exams finished. Izuku squeezed Osamu's hand. He didn't want his friends to see him like this. He really didn't. But he couldn't express that without a voice or the ability to even move or open his eyes. Rest, Izuku, please. He tried to fight the pull of drugs and his body despite what Osamu asked him. And he couldn't fight the pull of drugs and his body's desire to sleep when Osamu had asked him to rest. So he slept, or rather, he fell back into the void of restless unconsciousness. This time he floated in the darkness, despite the sound of voices floating around him. Half-formed thoughts floated around in the void-like mind, thoughts of why he should endure this, and how he was supposed to move forward from this. What kind of half-life was he having? Even after all those promises, Izuku didn't believe them. He didn't believe them. He had to be imagining all of this, right? Maybe he was hallucinating everything through the pain. When shit stopped making sense, he finally opened his eyes. Blessedly, the lights were turned down. The room was in a simple apartment bedroom, though the room he was in was a simple apartment bedroom, though it was in the traditional style, so all tatami mats and screen doors. Izuku was on the floor futon and had zero desire to move. He was still with his neck brace and muzzle on, so calling for someone was not an option. He glanced around as much as a neck brace would allow, and realized he was hooked up to all kinds of machines, and at least 2 IVs. The door slid open, and Izuku couldn't tilt his head down to check who it was. Izuku? Toshi. Izuku reached out his hands, and they were immediately taken. Hitoshi kissed Izuku's scarred knuckles and settled next to him on the tatami mats. He whined from behind the muzzle. I'm sorry, Zu. I'm so fucking sorry. Shuzenzi-san is reviewing your scans right now. I should have walked you home. Fuck, I should have. Izuku put a hand over Hitoshi's mouth and shook his head a little. The Thai teen smiled around his hand and kissed the pads of his fingers. I'll be right back. I'm going to tell everyone you're awake. Izuku didn't stop him. He wasn't altogether sure who everyone was, but he hoped Osamu was included. This might not be a suicide attempt, but he did save Izuku's life. Good news. Shuzenzi-san toddled in a few moments later. Izuku hadn't seen her in a while, but she was looking older, more tired. No neck or head wounds that I can see. Let's get that brace and muzzle off, dear. It's been on for long enough. That was a good question. How long had Izuku been here? He's been in the stand, brace and muzzle. Where was Osamu? Izuku groaned, unable to speak. Hang on, kiddo. Osamu was there suddenly and took his hands. Breathe for me, okay? I'm going to get you out of that piece of that thing. Izuku's mentor tucked his arms under Izuku's shoulders and pulled him up with Hitoshi's help. Oh, Toshi was back. Osamu unlatched the brace from around his neck. Izuku immediately fell forward and rolled in a stretch. God, that felt good. The joints popped a few times as he groaned into the leather across his face. "Are you okay?" Hitoshi pulled his chin up. Izuku nodded. He was trying not to think about the giant fucking muzzle on his face. He just wanted the damn thing off now that he was awake and actually consciously aware of the damn thing practically suffocating him. Osamu scooted around behind him and got to work. It took an agonizingly long time for the locks to get the locks popped open, but once they did, the whole device was ripped from his face and Izuku gasped for fresh air. "Ow," he groaned. His ribs were sore. Yeah, those ribs are going to be sore for a few days, dear. But Chiyo's quirk healed your surgery wound. Shizenzi sat on her knees behind him. "You're medically clear. You can leave in the morning, but take it easy for a few weeks. Eraser should be back soon. I imagine there'll be news for your mother." "My mum? You're talking about her." "You heard us?" Osamu asked. "Yeah, sort of. I was in and out. How long have I been here?" 6 hours, Hitoshi grumbled. Do you know how worried I was for you? I've been about you." Izuku pulled Toshi into a hug. "It's okay." "But you weren't." Toshi hugged him back carefully, but tightly. "You weren't okay. I was so scared that you were going to die. Your lung was punctured, Izuku. She put that horrible thing on your head. I can't." Izuku pulled Hitoshi's face out from his shoulder and pressed their foreheads together. He ran a thumb across the scars on Hitoshi's cheeks. There was a strange sort of intimacy in sharing these kinds of scars. Hitoshi closed his eyes and hugged Izuku again. "I know." Izuku kissed Hitoshi's forehead. "I know." "Izuku, we need to talk." Osamu interrupted the intimate moment, but it was necessary. "Can we do it over a meal, Samu? I'm starving." "Sure thing, kid. Come on." It took a few minutes to get Izuku on his feet. Once he was, Shizenji-san rewrapped his ribs tightly and put a couple of bandages where the muzzle had left on his face. They'd be scarred, but not too badly. Osamu took one arm and Hitoshi took the other, and they led Izuku out of the main room and into the main area of the apartment and sat him down at a low table with a big cushion. God, that felt amazing. "I'll get you some dinner." The older woman left for the kitchen, which put Izuku between Hitoshi and Osamu. What happened, kid?" Izuku sighed. He rubbed at his sore rib cage. "I got home and my mother grabbed the acceptance letter before I could say anything. She accused me of lying, cheating, and forging the letter. I tried to argue, for once, just for once. It didn't work. I don't know, it's all a blur. I feel like it all happened at once." "It's alright. You don't need to go into details, but there's no way you're going back to that house. If I knew your mother was a foxglove, but I didn't know how bad it was. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry I didn't see this." Izuku brushed a hand across the band of Osamu's wrist, a comforting gesture between the mentor and mentee. "I kept it a secret. It wasn't your job to—" "Yes, it was, Izuku." The older man cut him off with a frustrated tone. "It's my job to keep you safe. It's my job to make sure you make it through this shitty fucking life, and fuck, I fucked it up. I fucked it up again." "No." Izuku pressed his fingers on the red band on Osamu's wrist. This is not what was going to happen to me. This is not what's going to happen to me. I won't be another statistic. There we go. I will not have another red fucking band on someone else's wrist. I won't. So get that out your head. Got it? His mentor's shoulders relaxed. He took Izuku's hand and nodded. Yeah, thanks, kid. But please do me a favor and not keep this kind of secret from me again. I want to keep you safe, and I can't do that if you hide the abuse. Izuku sighed. I know. I'm sorry. I won't hide it from you again. Hitoshi had been eerily quiet throughout the whole conversation. Izuku leaned forward to try and catch his eye. When he did, the taller teen smiled. We should talk later in private. Yeah, Hitoshi reached his hand out to brush along Izuku's cheek. We should. The door opened and they both pulled back into themselves, closing out the world in fear that they might intrude. Well, okay. The door opened and they both pulled back into themselves, closing out the world for fear it might intrude on their little slice of peace. But it wasn't an intrusion. Instead, it was Eraserhead who walked through the front door. There you are, Shuzenzi-san said, coming back into the living room with a tray. She had a big bowl of rice and several serving bowls, as well as a few bowls of meat and veggies. Come on then. I doubt you've eaten either. You know, it's really hard to tell you apart from Chio. I'm the nicer twin. Eraserhead sat down next to Hitoshi with Shinzu's. Wow, I just said the name a second ago. Next to Shuzenzi-san, with Shuzenzi-san next to Osamu. Their gracious host dished them all with some rice and let them pick what meats, veggies, and sauces they wanted. She was a great cook. Izuku couldn't remember the last time he had a home-cooked meal that he hadn't butchered himself. He was a miserable cook, but once he was old enough to lift a pan, Inko refused to cook for him. Midoriya. The hero interrupted their meal as they were about halfway through. Your mother was arrested on child abuse and attempted murder charges. Oh, how does one react to that? Honestly, he didn't believe he would stick. After all, he was quirkless. They let her go in the morning, so he shrugged and continued eating. I'm sure there's a shock factor to this, but it's not shock eraser. Osamu set his bowl down, chopsticks politely placed on the holder next to him. I'm sorry, but neither Izuku or myself would believe any reason for the police to keep Inko Midoriya in jail for crimes against a quirkless person, especially not when it's her own son. Most of the country views it as her right to punish her child any way she wishes, especially because of his quirk status. That's barbaric, Eraserhead grumbled. As true as it may be, it's our existence. That's why the community members are the young amongst us. We try to protect them. It doesn't always work. Izuku's phone buzzed in his pocket. He took it out just to check. Several missed calls, a dozen messages, and an incoming call from Nami. She wouldn't be calling him in this state unless Osamu wasn't answering. Maybe his phone was off. Nami? He stood up to answer, limping towards the other room. Wasn't she here earlier? A wail that echoed from the other end of the line brought him to his knees before he could even get past the living room door. Osamu was there at his side within seconds. The woman was speaking nonsense, sobbing into the phone as she tried to explain what happened. Izuku couldn't understand. He held out the phone to Osamu. Who? Was all Izuku asked, all that he could force out his throat. Nami, slow down. The elder stood up, letting Izuku cling to his leg as he tried to calm their friend down. Nami, please listen to me. Take in 5 breaths. You know how this goes. Please, I need you to focus. He paused, letting her speak. The way that his face cracked when Izuku told Izuku all he needed to know. One of their own was dead. One of the Quirkless people within their city, in their dwindling community, was gone. Izuku grabbed Osamu's shirt, begging on his knees for information, anything. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Do not move. Do you understand? He hung up the phone a moment later and crouched down beside Izuku and handed back his phone. No, please. Izuku balled his fist into the man's shirt. Please tell me it wasn't Emi. Izuku screamed. He couldn't hold it back. The shattered cry that croaked out of his lungs burned his still healing ribs, but he ignored the pain. Emi, their most vulnerable after losing her own mentee mere months ago. Why was she alone? Who had left her alone? They all watched over the elders when a mentee was lost. They always watched over the elders when a mentee was lost. Izuku shook his head, banged his fist on Osamu's chest. He didn't want to believe it. Hitoshi. The teen came over and wrapped Izuku in his arms, pulling him away from Osamu. The older man kissed the top of Izuku's head in his usual fatherly manner. I'll be back. Stay with him. When Hitoshi nodded, Osamu quickly took his chin roughly above Izuku. Do not leave him alone. Am I understood? Yes, sir. Izuku felt his body go into shutdown mode. He had tried to be strong for Emi, for Nami. They were best friends. They were sisters in grief and sorrow. They'd known each other since they were children. They grew up together. Nami had probably left Emi's side to help Osamu save Izuku. God, this was awful. Izuku? Don't. He ripped his arms from Hitoshi's hands and got up so he could pace, hugging his arms to his aching rib cage. I can't breathe. Fuck, I can't breathe. Emi. She just lost her mentee 3 months ago, 2 weeks before I met you, Asami. She was 6, a 6-year-old. She swallowed a bottle of pills. Her mother... Izuku choked back a sob. Her mother told her she shouldn't have been born, and she... His body turned so fast that it startled the 2 adults in the room. Izuku marched over to erase the head, shoving a palm against his chest. The hero barely batted an eye at the action, but didn't stop Izuku either. This is our reality. Don't you get it now? We live half a life on some horrible razor's edge between being tolerated and being despised. You thought shit got better? You thought just because you didn't see the discrimination that it wasn't there? You're thorn just like the rest of them. Izuku. No, Shizenzi. He deserves to hear it. I don't care if he arrested my mother. I don't care because he doesn't understand. Izuku, that's not fair. You don't know. Neither did you, Toshi. Izuku pulled himself up again and stumbled back towards the bedroom where he could just lay down and forget this damn day ever happened. But you decided to learn. You earned your bans. You chose to understand us. Aizawa is just a hero on a power trip because he saw someone weak and thought he could save. Well, here's your lesson today, Aizawa. I don't need you to save me. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. That was chapter 3 of It's Not Love If You Run When It's Hard. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to take care of yourself, and I'll see you guys later. This was a long one. Make sure to take care. Bye.